When I first started playing slide guitar, I didn't know a lot about it. And in my mind, slide guitar was really something that regular guitar players did on the side occasionally for a different sound. You know, I'm thinking bottleneck slide. Um, I was aware when I first got into the slide of Duane Allman, and he was, of course, the pinnacle to me of what you could do on slide guitar. And he was really the only one that I knew of that could play like legitimate melodies on slide guitar, and very much in a blues style, of course, a master. But I didn't know that you could actually play anything on a slide guitar, really any style. And that realization came when a friend of mine gave me a cassette tape of Skip Hop and Wobble, Jerry Douglas featured on the Dobro. And I put that on, and what I heard completely blew my mind, totally opened up my world as to what was possible on slide guitar. And that really began my path playing slide. You know, again, before that moment, I didn't realize it was something that you could do full time, and it was like a real instrument all of its own. And so, what I want to talk about in this video is kind of how you go from, you know, just using the slide occasionally to get that sort of dirty blues sound, you know, nothing really technically challenging, and you know kind of what I mean, where the slide is on all the strings, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe a few basic licks, to something much more involved where you can, by the way, there's not anything wrong with that, and I do that occasionally, but there's much more that you can do, you know. So that detailed melody playing is something that you can sort of you can practice and you can get to. It's a little bit more technically challenging, but for those that are interested in this path, I'm going to discuss sort of how you bridge that gap between, you know, the slide as just sort of utility side instrument and something that could become your main instrument. So there's two big things to consider. One is the tuning. I'll go over this first because it's pretty simple to understand. In the way I play, most of the time I use a G tuning, which is not, you know, common. When you first begin playing, you're usually like in an E or a D, maybe A, and those are good tunings if you're kind of just getting started and you want a cool sound. But the reason I don't use that as much is because the intervals between the strings are really big, right? So I can go flip this little lever, and now I'm in a D tuning. So in D tuning, this is kind of, you've got your high D on the top note there and on the low, D, A, D, F sharp, D. Kind of a familiar sound for those who are just getting into slide. It's a great sound. There's a good amount you can do with it, but the problem is if you want to play melodies, the intervals between each string are so wide, you have to play a bunch of notes on one string before you get to the proper note on the next string. So, you know, it's a lot of notes, especially for, you know, going from the 6th string to the 5th string. There's 4 notes you got to play. 1, 2, 3, 4. Before you, in the G tuning, the intervals are much closer together, so there's a lot less work you got to do on each string. So to go from the 6th string to the 5th string in a scale, there's only one note that you have to fret before you get here. So you can go this direction across the strings much easier. And it really comes into play when you're playing in what I call closed position. So maybe you're up here, you're not using as many open strings. There's a few strings where you gotta do a few notes on the same string, but mostly it's just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So that's why I use the G tuning. It's also pitched a little bit higher, the strings are a little tighter, and it makes for really punchy melodies. Now the second piece is the technique, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit more. So really, to get the detailed melody playing, you know, except for a few virtuosos like Derek Trucks and Duane Allman, playing lap style is really going to be what you want. You use a solid bar. It's not like a bottleneck, that you put on your finger. It's solid, and this gives it, the fact that it's solid steel makes it a really rich, full tone. It's not hollow. It also has beveled edges, so the edges of the bar are kind of like this at a slant, and so it comes to a point, and so that point is what you use to play single notes. As opposed to putting the bar down on all the strings, you can tilt it and just play one note at a time. So the bar, the lap style slide, the fact that the strings are very high off the neck, you never press them down to the fretboard, that all is going to really play make a difference in getting a big sound and getting to where you can play kind of detailed melodies on this instrument. So yeah, so then the next big thing is like, how do you go from just having the bar on all the strings and trying to play melodies? If you're moving the bar back and forth playing single notes, you're getting all the strings ringing. You don't want that. So we tilt the bar, like I say. So you can just try that, playing one note at a time. And the bar is tilted. So, all the strings below where my bar is just on that one string are not being fretted, and the ones above, and my pinky and my ring finger kind of mute these lower strings. They sit on the strings behind my bar. So I've just got the third string, the G string, fretted right now. These low strings are all muted by my pinky and ring finger. And then my middle finger comes out past the bar and even mutes the string in front of the bar. So that's the second string, right? So then I get a clean note. Now, at first, when you switch strings, if I'm going from a low string to a higher string, people will kind of hop. They'll kind of lift the bar. And that's cool, and that's a good way to start, is you kind of, because if you just push the bar forward, your bar's tilted down, it's beveled, it's going to get caught, right? So a lot of people initially hop, so you hear a little space there. Da, 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 da. Again, that's okay for when you're starting, but really what you want to do is get it smooth. So you don't hear any break in the sound. It's like a saxophone. Da, 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 right? And you can go across the strings without any gap in the sound. And the way you do that is I lower my wrist and flatten the bar a little bit so I can just get it over that next string. And so that's a delicate technique, and it takes a little bit of work, but that's how you do it. And going down from high string to low is a little bit easier. You just pull that string off of the, say the high string down to the second string. You just pull it down, and your ring finger and middle finger will mute the string in front, so it doesn't ring. So I play the first string, pull it down to the second string. Now that first string is muted by my ring finger, right? So the holding the bar properly naturally mutes a lot of the strings. So it's easier to go down. You don't have to flatten your wrists because you're just pulling away. So that is sort of like a quick overview of how you can go from playing sort of part-time slide, making the sounds, again, that's totally cool, but to getting it to that next level where you can play melodies, you can really play anything that might come to mind. The technique is a little bit more involved and will take some practice, but this should get you started in that direction. It's an amazing instrument, and when it's played well, it really is a sound like no other. So hopefully that's helpful. Thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. Subscribe if you're into what you're hearing, and we'll see you soon.